What's up, guys? In this episode, we are going to finish bolting in the Crown Vic front suspension and put my engine and tranny back in and start putting the truck back together. Okay, we have the lower control arms bolted in loosely. We've got these nuts put on, and this last bolt ran in. We used a bottle jack and a chunk of wood to push that frame rail that way just a little bit. We've got the motor mounts in place. These are tightened down. Just realized that this fuel line needs to go underneath there, so we're going to have to bend that. Also, I don't think I showed you these motor mounts in a previous video, or I didn't show them to you painted up, so ready to put the engine in, I think. Well, this is it. Engine and tranny are bolted up and truck is ready for the marriage. So here we go. Cody and Jake and I spent about an hour the other night getting this in place, and we were able to get it set in the right position roughly and get a bolt in this side, and then we just put a punch kind of holding this side in place right here. And then I spent about 2 hours today loosening everything, all the bolts up, and just moving it around slightly, so I was able to get that last bolt in. And I just finished bolting the transmission mount on and in place. And yesterday, Cody texted me and told me there was oil all over the ground. And there was about a quart. There's a bunch of floor dry down there. And I got really worried because I was nervous that my pan seals were leaking. I just replaced it, and the install didn't go great. But after I drove around for 2 hours and bought a pan gasket, I crawled underneath the truck, and it was just my drain plug. The brand new seal I bought was leaking, so I replaced that, and hopefully it's not going to leak anymore. So I have a list of everything I think I need to do to get the truck back on the road. I've got a lot of stuff on there, and most of this is in the order I want to do it. But there's a few things that I can do while I'm waiting for RTV to dry or paint to dry. And one of them is to trim down this radius arm bracket. This bolted to the frame, and I removed it and took out some rivets. And I cut this chunk off because part of this bracket here was a brace against a factory cross member that went behind the engine. And I'll show that to you real quick. Well, it's hard to see, but it goes right there. And here's that cross member. And the reason I cut this piece off and I'm going to reinstall it is just because I see a lot of people either leave that whole bracket on there or don't put it on at all, and I really like having that on there just because it's more support, and the factory had it on there and it just makes sense for me to put it back on. I put a coat of POR 15 and some satin black Rust-Oleum on these cross member brackets that I trimmed down, and now I'm going to just bolt them on with some grade 8 hardware. Just finished installing some Raybestos calipers and some Power Stop Top Cop brake pads. The next thing I have to do is remove this rag joint here so I can install the new splined U-joint, this end splined, to hook up my steering shaft from the stock column to the Crown Vic. And the best way to do this, apparently, is to take a 3/4 inch drill bit and drill that out, and it should allow this rag joint to slide right off the splines. I don't have a 3/4, but I have a 5/8, so we're going to give that a shot. And while I'm in here, I'm going to be replacing this plastic bearing with an all metal one that I got on eBay. And as you can see, it's a little bit shot, so definitely got to replace that. Well, the drill bit didn't work. The guy who recommended that has a 67, and I guess the columns are a little bit differently. So I'm going to try and carefully split this off the shaft with a cutting wheel. Well, I got the bottom part off. I made a cut here and a cut here at an angle. I don't know if you can really see, but I nicked my steering column a little bit. And I cut a little bit into the splines, which you really don't want to do. I totally messed this up. But let's see if we can get this last piece off. There we go. Got it. So this is what it looks like. This is really hot still. There's splines, and the end of the shaft right here kind of flares out a little bit, and that's what holds that on. And so I'm going to have to grind this down a little bit so it doesn't flare out, and then spend a bunch of time with a file cleaning up all the splines. I spent a little bit of time with a grinder taking this lip off right here, and then I used a very small hand file and filed that lip down on all the splines. And now I can put my U-joint on. And it kind of fits on there. There we go. Now I just need to pull that back off and change out this plastic bearing. Okay, I've got the plastic one pushed out. You just stick a screwdriver in here and push on the tabs. And then I've got the new one pushed in here. Now I need to drill 3 holes through the column and into the bearing retainer part. The actual bearing is a smaller piece down here. And you can also weld this in if you want to. They recommend it, but I don't have a welder here today. So I'm just going to drill 3 holes and then use 3 self-tapping screws that they provided. Okay, I've got the holes drilled and the bearing bolted in. It just uses 3 self-tapping screws. I'm going to pull it back out once I get my steering shaft figured out and paint it. So I've also got the upper U-joint on and the lower U-joint. And right now I'm measuring for my steering shaft. I think I'm going to cut it around 16¼ inches. And here's that steering shaft. It's a collapsible one, and the way you want to cut it is with it fully extended. Got the shaft cut down, and I have it collapsed and bottoming out on that lower U-joint. And this is as high as it'll go, and I can't quite get it in that upper U-joint. it looks like it's hitting on this motor mount right here. There's a lip that hangs down just a little bit. So I'm gonna trim that down and hopefully my steering shaft will fit. Well, I got that lip cut out of there and I have the steering shaft in. I had to trim an 1/8 inch off of this end to get it to fit in there, and it's still too long. I need to cut, I don't know, probably 3/4 of an inch off, maybe. But this is still bottomed out, so I need to trim it up to here. But it's better to leave it long and cut it down than have to cut it too short. Okay, I have my wheels straight. I have my steering wheel straight and bungee corded in the right position. I've got the shaft in and I've got the U-joints oriented the way I want them. I put a little dab of paint on all of these set screws and screwed those in, so hopefully those are going to mark where I need to drill holes and dimple holes. So that paint worked great. I've got 2 marks here, and I've got a mark right here. I center punched it right here, and then I'm going to drill a hole through one side of the tube on this hollow shaft, and it's just going to go down. And then on this solid shaft here, I'm going to dimple both spots. Got my new steering column bearing painted and installed. I put a little dimple on the shaft there. Also have dimple here and here, and a hole and a dimple. Now I just need to install it. Got the steering shaft in. Make sure you put red Loctite on your set screws and the jam nuts. I also made this brake line real quick just because it was a little hard to get at down there. I guess it's time to bolt the headers on. Got my brake lines made. I'm using the stock proportioning valve and master and booster, since this was a disc brake in the front and drum brake in the rear truck. So for the driver's side, I'm just running off the proportioning valve, and I'm using NiCopp lines. This stuff bends really easily. So running off the proportioning valve down to the factory Crown Vic rubber hose. And it looks like it's touching from this angle, but it's not. I didn't have a bubble flare tool, so I just have an adapter from standard line to metric. And the part number for that adapter is Edelmann 271300. And then for the passenger side, I've got a line coming off the proportioning valve going down to a union right here, right there. And that union connects to the line that was on the Crown Vic subframe. It's a factory one that runs from here underneath. You can see it there, goes underneath. And over to here to the rubber hose. I'm also working on getting this header installed. I've got the driver's side on. There's a little bit of interference with the lower control arm mount, so I just need to do a little bit of trimming and then I can bolt that on. Got it on the ground with the engine in for the first time, and it is low. It looks really good to me. The rear is super high. I'm definitely gonna have to do something about that. Next, I'm gonna put the sway bar on, or bolt it up. To do that, you wanna have your end link straight up and down like that. And then just hold it up to the frame and drill some holes. Also gonna put the bolts in my lower control arm mounts now that it's on the ground, and tighten those up. The sway bar bushings are seized onto the sway bar, and I can't get this to rotate at all. I've bolted in the front hole. I've got a bolt in the front hole over there. I'm just gonna bolt the front in over here for now, and I'm gonna have to figure that out later. Just finished installing all my front accessories. I'm not gonna be hooking the AC compressor back up right now because it doesn't work with my new Saginaw pump. The pump's off an 86 and the guy swore to me that it would fit, and it definitely doesn't work with my compressor. I don't know what this mount is for, if that's right, but I'm gonna have to modify it and combine it with my other compressor mount. And I'm also tearing apart the front clip just because I've got this brand new core support here that I want to install. And this right here is pretty rusty, and I'm glad I'm doing this. Well, we got the front clip apart. Had to fight with a bunch of these little U-bolt clips here. This one broke. And I tossed the core support on there, but it looks like we're going to want it off the truck since we're bolting it together with the inner fenders and fenders together. So we're going to assemble that and then put the front clip on and hook up some wiring and put some fluids in. Okay, I've got my front clip bolted on loosely. I've got my radiator in, my training lines connected, everything else. Fluids in there. I'm gonna roll it outside and try and start it. Something just lit on fire. I have open headers right now. I didn't hook the exhaust back up, so I don't know if it's shooting flames out of that or what. But I'm gonna wait for someone else to show up so I can try and start it again. Also, my carb linkage is kind of sticky, so I need to figure that out, I guess. It runs. Something's messed up with the carb linkage still, but I'm going to try and start it one more time. I need to add some tranny fluid to it too, so we're going to go ahead and do that. I did figure out the issue with the high idle and the carb linkage not working correctly. When I reinstalled my engine and transmission, the kickdown rod got a little bent up, and I didn't get it bent back correctly. So right now I have it zip tied right there, and we're just going to leave it right there for now until I get a new cable. I did drive the truck around the block without power steering or anything, and it does move and stop. But you guys are going to have to wait until the next episode to see it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. In the next episode, we're going to get my power steering hooked up, and you're going to see me drive the truck. So please like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.